Today, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Toby Hough, the VP of People and Culture for the Europe region at HiBob, to the Digital HR Leaders podcast. Toby, welcome to the show. It's great to talk with you. Let's start with you. For listeners that haven't met you yet, please could you give them a brief snapshot of who Toby is and the journey that led you to where you are today?
Yes, delighted to. And David, thanks so much for having me on your podcast, which I've been a listener to in the past and delighted to be here. I had an unconventional route into HR. I didn't start my career there. I started in tech consulting for one of the big four in the UK. And that led me to work in a variety of sort of digital transformation and consolidation projects. A stint 2 years working in the technology program delivery for London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games. And then that time made me realize that my best work was really when I felt truly part of a team, not necessarily the consulting world. So I took an opportunity to move in the tech side, implement technology implementation to a Silicon Valley. I guess then it was still a startup. It had just taken funding, having been bootstrapped for over 10 years. And it was whilst I was there that I made the move into their people and culture team. It wasn't an easy decision. I loved the client-facing work that I was doing. But a number of signs had been pointing to the HR world for me. And this opportunity was fabulous, a chance to continue to grow my career, but move into an HR leadership position. So my first role in HR was head of people and culture for Europe for that company, which was then UK, Germany, France. And I haven't looked back since. So that has led me to ultimately to where I am today at HiBob, where I've been for almost exactly 4 years. I look after the Europe region at HiBob. That's 5 official sites and another 12 where we have bobbers through different mechanisms. So I'm familiar with that, the internationalization challenges, but our main sites are UK, Netherlands, Portugal, Germany, Croatia, and it's about 450 bobbers in total.
And growing all the time. If you've been at HiBob for 4 years, I know from speaking to you in the past, but also some of your colleagues on the podcast as well. HiBob's been going through pretty rapid growth over that time. I presume you didn't have 400 people 4 years ago when you started.
No, we had 55 in the UK and 5 in the Netherlands, and globally the company was 270. Now globally the company is about 1,400, and that Europe region is around 450. So, and that was one of the things that really attracted me to the role. The promise was this growth journey, and it's really delivered. And we've grown through a combination of organically, but there have been, just in the Europe region alone, there have been 2 acquisitions in that time as well, that have brought with it ultimately new product lines to our customers, but also more complexity in terms of the geographical spread of the team.
And it's interesting, you said you started in technology consulting. You're now leading people in Europe in a technology company, an HR technology company. So it's a kind of nice combination of I guess, your 2 passions.
That's right. And actually, well, first of all, because HiBob's product is HR, we make, I'm biased now, but I was a potential buyer before I moved into this company. So we make what I would say is really a first-class human capital management HCM platform that spans everything across the suite, really full stack HR offering, as well as now pushing more into the office of the CFO through both payroll and FP&A products as well, financial planning and analysis. So the scope is really broad. And one of the things I love about my role is I probably spend about 5 to 10% of my time meeting customers and prospects, and then another 5 to 10% of my time in these sorts of situations discussing the trends that we're seeing in the industry, in various different forums. And it's such a privilege because and I say this to my team, it forces us to spend time looking up and out. It's the HR world is so demanding, and getting more so, that you can be so pulled into your world around you, the problems that you're facing, the challenges that you're facing, the strategy to deliver. And I love opportunities where we have to pause, take a breath, and think, right, what are we seeing? What are we really seeing? Like, what trends are we seeing in our business? How does that correlate to what we're hearing from our customers and prospects? So you're right, that little bridge to the kind of consulting start is still it's still a part of me that I tap into today, and I really enjoy.
Yeah, I suppose essentially as well, you and the other people teams at HiBob in your other regions, you're effectively customer zero, I guess, for the product as well. So which again adds, probably you spend 5 or 10% of your time with your product teams. I guess you're helping them understand the market, but also understand what works well in the product and what they might want to focus on enhancing, I guess, as well.
That's right. So, some of it is really the obvious thing. So when we launched Bob Hiring, our talent acquisition team worked really, really closely with the product team that were responsible for that. But I also like those smaller moments in throughout the year where we will identify an enhancement to an existing module that we're struggling with that we think would make a difference to others. And I mean, an example that jumps to mind was a program that I led for Bob now over 2 years ago, was the identification and rollout of our company values. It was values at Medallia that actually got me into, this is the Silicon Valley startup that I joined, that got me into HR in the first place. So it was really rewarding to lead that program at HiBob. But there was no space within the platform to store your values and no way to link them to other features that exist. And part of our research that we had undertaken internally was, we really don't want these values to live on the wall. Their home shouldn't be a poster. The home needs to be within the product. And we got our product team to buy into that pretty quickly. And it was really rewarding about 8 months down the line when we released that feature within the core functionality of Bob, the kind of main, not all the additional components of the product, but in the main core HR product, where any client now can now add their values in, and it links through to other parts of the product. And I was really satisfied when that came to life.
No, that's really good. And obviously, I think we first met at the Hardcore event that you hosted in London earlier this year, so March 2025. And I mean, I certainly could see you had mainly customers there, but you also had other organizations that your colleagues are talking to, and the buzz and the energy was really impressive. And I have to say, you did a magnificent job as MC as well, Toby. So yeah, it was really good to meet some of HiBob's customers, and because typically you're working with organizations that are, correct me if I'm wrong, sort of less than 20,000 employees, isn't that right?
That's right. And so appreciate that, especially coming from you, David, who I've seen comparing many a huge event, including Unleash in Paris on 2 occasions now. And but I love our customers and I learn from them. And that's the other thing. I think something that's part of HiBob's DNA, it's set from our leadership, is respect towards what the rest of the industry is doing. There's enough space for all of us. There's some, each of the different HR tech providers will take a different approach to what they think that the industry needs. And there's space for that. And I feel the same about our customers. The nature of our customers and the nature of Bob, particularly, it's a very engaging, almost kind of B2C user interface. And that's one of the USPs of us. It attracts a certain type of company. We talk about sort of modern mid-sized multinational. But what we've come to realize is that modern is a mindset. It's not a VC-backed tech company. It very often they are, but it's not only. And it could be a family-run and owned manufacturing business in rural Germany if they want to take their business somewhere different, particularly when it comes to their people. And one of our taglines is one that really resonates with me, which is empower your people, power your business. And I absolutely love that. That's, I think, the common ground that we find with our customers, where we share that in common with them. And as a result, we learn from them as well.
I actually wrote that down. That was such a good line. So I really like that.
I wish I could claim that as my own, but that was our wonderful marketing team. But I absolutely love it.
No, it's really good. And actually, one of the things I saw when I was at Hardcore, and spoke to some of the organizations that are using HiBob. A number of those companies are scaling. And as you've mentioned, Toby, you've worked in a number of businesses that have been scaling and leading, and obviously you're leading HR across multiple countries in Europe at HiBob today. What are some of the patterns that you've noticed about how organizations change as they move from those early fast growth stages into something much more mature?
Yeah, this is a phase that I love, and feel now that I can be excited about it. It was daunting in the early days, and there are a few different things that jump out the memory, and it's real now for us at HiBob. The first one is you can't avoid it. There is a bit of an identity crisis. You will hear these organizations as they move from kind of growth to scale, from startup to scale up, or whichever language you want to use. Kind of you hold on to the past. We must, and there's certain language which is a real warning sign. We need to preserve our culture. That's a big warning sign for me, because culture can't be preserved. It's not a jam in a jar. It's something which will evolve, because it is to do with how your team behaves and interacts together as a group. And when that group is 50 people, it's going to be very different to when it's 1,500 people, and that should be celebrated. I think that's more widely accepted these days. It's interesting. 10 years ago, I did hear people say we've got to preserve and protect our culture or language like it. Now you tend to hear people say we need to evolve our culture, and that I think is more widely accepted, and it's the right direction. But there are other areas that I don't think have caught up, and the one that jumps out is this whole idea of bureaucracy and process. And you'll hear growing businesses say, well, we don't want to become one of these big bureaucratic corporate giants, and we want to keep nimble. The problem is, I think it's unrealistic, because why do you need the bureaucracy? Why do you need the process? And this is bigger than just HR. As your whole systems get more complex, you need that. And there's a corresponding conflicting demand, which is we don't want to be siloed. We want to work really well cross-functionally. Well, as your cross-functional landscape becomes way bigger, what do you need in order to help you work cross-functionally? Often you need process, and you need more documented and accepted ways of working. And I think that's the identity crisis that we still see, where organizations struggle. And then there's a couple of other areas. One is the whole concept of change. And I don't think this is limited only to scaling businesses, but I think they are exposed to such a vast amount of change that they experience it. And this is something I really noticed looking within Bob, was that we had certain members of our team who had a great relationship with change, and others that were looking for more traditional solutions to change. And then it all came together for me in January 2023, when a customer of HiBob, again, back to what we were saying earlier, was talking at our business kickoff in January. And he was asked, what's been your ticket to success as you've grown? And he said, it's our whole business's relationship to change. And I started to then go back and think about the teams that I support. And I noticed that there are those that essentially have an ingrained change mindset. They understand that it is an inevitable part of working in a growing business, and they are looking for and are pushing for the next iteration of how to work, the next org structure development. And then there's another part of the business that are talking about needing change management, org restructures, like they're one-off things that will finish. And this, for me, was a really important moment. You realize at that point that the traditional approaches to change management are not fit for purpose, certainly not in a scaling organization. It implies, one, that someone else comes and helps you do it. Two, that there's a beginning and an end. And that you know exactly where you're going to. When you look at any model, most of those models for change management, it is about sketching up that view of the future and then navigating towards it through whichever preferred model you're going for. So I think that's a big learning for me, and I've seen that pattern in different businesses, is that the way we even talk about change has to be very intentional, and we cannot talk about it as a period of instability that interrupts otherwise calm waters. And that's before, David, we've even looked out of into the wider world right now. And then the last one that jumps out for me, and it's very relevant, I think, right now, is the whole concept of performance. And, a successful scale up will often ride a beautiful wave in those early days. Once they get past kind of nailing what their product is, and they're going through Series A, Series B, and they're going through that, do we have product market fit and can we scale? Those two sort of first big questions early on. If they do have the product market fit and they've got the right people in the business, then that can be an amazing and exhilarating period, and it can feel like nothing can stop you. Like, we are going to take over the world. And then what happens is competition appears where it didn't used to be. All the low-hanging fruit and the easy things have been exhausted. There's a target on your back as a business that wasn't there before, so there's more scrutiny, and that's when it can get really hard on the performance side, because you've then got to really look inwards and really have a growth mindset to say, the way that we think about what good performance is totally different now. What we're asking of people who have thrived here in the past now needs to change, and that's not easy. And I think I've seen that in a couple of environments, and candidly, I think we're also going through that right now at HiBob.
Yeah, really interesting. I was listening to what you were saying about change, and I was thinking about actually business transformation as well. And it's almost continuous now, isn't it? It's not episodic, if that's even a word. Which used to, the perception was that you go through a transformation, as you said, there's a start and an end, and then there's a period of breathing perhaps, and then there's another transformation. Whereas now it seems things are moving so fast, companies are having to continually transform all the time to stay ahead of competition and stay ahead of the pack. And as you said, that when that comes to performance, particularly if you're in an organization that's scaling, it can be a real challenge for individuals, and those that maybe thrive when in an organization that's a certain size and position in its trajectory, maybe not those that thrive in the future. And I'm just wondering, as a kind of people leader, how does that play out for individuals, as I said, who might have once been celebrated as top performers, but now need to work in a different way to stay effective?
Yeah, it's really tough. And some people self-select out. I still remember having, just joined Medallia in, I guess this would have been 2013, 2014. And I was very junior. There was someone I really looked up to on the implementation team. And he said he was leaving. And I was completely shocked by this. I thought we were all on a kind of, stages of tribal leadership, stage 5, mission driven, changing the world. And I didn't understand his response then, but I really understand it now, because he said, I'm an early stage guy and we're getting too big now, and I'm off to the next early stage. That's what I love. And I really respect people that can identify that and understand the value they bring in those early stages. But equally, I have seen, and I also think I've sort of humble brag, I think I've been able to do this. I've seen others really do this well, which is develop themselves through those periods. And it's very possible, but it first of all, it requires a proper dose of Carol Dweck's growth mindset. You've really got to look within at the way that you are working and whether that is actually driving impact for the business as it stands today, rather than relying on feedback from 6 to 12 months ago or further back. But the business itself can really control that. There's, when it works, is that combination of the tone and direction the business is setting meets an individual's capacity for growth mindset. That's the ingredients. And the business has to be really intentional about calling out that the way that we are working now needs to be different to yesterday. And we have some nice slogans for that. I really think, they're cliche, but what got us here won't get us there is great. And actually, I've seen people really be able to rally around that. But then where the rubber hits the road is when you build your strategy. And I've had some really fulfilling conversations now with my own team. So this is less about the business stakeholders that we work with, where we've identified that as we build our strategy for the upcoming year, it looks very different to the year before. And that is going to require using different muscles, working in a different way in order to be able to deliver it. A great example, I would say, is that we talked earlier about the growth numbers of HiBob, but it's not been a straight line. We've had periods where we've paused, some years where we've grown very rapidly, and other years where it's been slower. And so we were able to acknowledge that year where we'd been through incredible sort of over 100% headcount growth in our different parts of the Europe region, the following year was going to be very, very different. And that was our chance to change the tires, to test the engine. And suddenly we were going from kind of pace and breadth to scrutiny and depth. And we needed to ask ourselves that. So I think that sort of pace change, you have to, if you can tie it to the strategy, that's where people understand it. You can say, hey, look, now this is what we were doing last year. This is what we now need to do in order to deliver the business numbers this year. And it will inevitably require a different way of working. And it's really powerful when the team themselves work that out themselves. They say, okay, yes, I realize now that the skill sets that I need will look and feel a little different. I think, again, back to your earlier question about this real sort of gear shift from those scaling days to the maturing days. Where it gets harder is where it can feel personal. And what I mean by that is that we really celebrate those kind of scrappy inventors in the early days. Most startups need generalists that can have a go at anything, see a problem, solve a problem. But if you're going to scale efficiently, it shifts. You're looking for people that will wait before they rush ahead to implement something to see if that's transferable and it's scalable and it's how other teams are doing it. Or if they're doing something brilliant in the way they're leading their own team, have they stopped and then taken time to share that so that other teams can learn from it? Especially in the age of AI, are we documenting things in a way that could be picked up and either made more automated through AI or turned into an agent of some kind? So that's the other piece here. Some of it, this is regardless of AI, is the journey that you have to go through from growth to scale. And now we have these external factors coming down the line, which require, I would say, less personalization maybe and more kind of systems thinking.
No, really interesting. And, staying on that kind of high performer that maybe where you have to have difficult conversations, perhaps, which obviously sometimes you have to do when you're senior in HR, supporting maybe your business leaders to have that conversation. How do you tell maybe someone that's been celebrated for a long time as a top performer that the behaviors that you used to reward now hold the team back?
Yeah, it's not easy, but first of all, it has to be done. And so then you look at sort of what are the tools that you can use to bring this to life. One of them is what we discussed before. I really think that the tying the how to the what is the first thing. In the early days, one of our leaders, they summed this up. We were running a workshop actually. So maybe this is the first answer to the question: is you get your leaders aligned. And I've been running a series of workshops with leaders across the Europe region together with my team on this very topic and having them connect personally with this idea. So we have this amazing leadership toolkit at HiBob that was developed in-house by our global head of director of leadership development, and we call it our leadership code. And it's 4 topics and 8 behaviors that you need all leaders to be able to exhibit. And we've been running some exercises with them around this leadership code. And one of the ones I've had them do is build their own code compasses. Each of those CODE it's an acronym. It represents different leadership capabilities that we believe are critical at HiBob. And so I had them actually build a compass to look back and say, right, well, what have we used? It was really unpacking what got us here won't get us there. So what did get us here? Like what was it? And of those 8 behaviors, which ones did we over-index on? And now if we look to the future, knowing what's ahead of us, what's going to get us there? And in every single one of those workshops, there was some of it, fortunately, there was a little bit of an overlap, a bit of a Venn diagram, which you would hope for. But in every workshop, there were also a realization that there were new behaviors that needed more of a focus. So you've got to start with your leaders because they can role model it themselves. They have to go through that realization themselves. Otherwise, they'll never authentically be able to have a human and radically candid conversation with their team. But if they can do it themselves, then it opens up their ability to sit down and really walk their team through that. The second thing is being on top of all of your people development material. So if you are striving to be a skills-based organization, or if you rely on a skills taxonomy or career ladders, whatever that is, they quickly get out of date in a scaling organization. And if you can update them, then the act of updating them and the conversations that you have with the team around it become part of that. But back to that early point, it was this team leader in one of those sessions, and she said, yeah, we used to just give people a number, and if they could meet that number, then that was an indication of performance. But now we need to know that there's uniformity and consistency around the 4 or 5 steps to get to that number. And in many ways, for me, that just summarized exactly the challenge that you were asking about here.
Yeah, it's very good. Very good. And I'm sure this is, lots of people listening to this episode, who are probably in a similar position, working in organizations that are maybe growing, maybe evolving, maybe changing. And I think that they'll be able to pull a lot out of this. We haven't mentioned AI that much yet. You've mentioned it a couple in your answers, Toby. So we've done pretty well to get to.
Yeah, how far did we get?
We're about 25 minutes in, which is pretty impressive, actually. So let's talk about AI, especially agentic AI. How are you seeing AI change the way maybe HiBob, but also maybe some of your customers' organizations approach team and individual performance?
Well, for us, and again, I would say there's quite a lot of synergy here with our customers. We talk about this together a lot. If you look back to the last 12 plus months, there's been a big effort around performance with AI means getting your hands dirty, having the courage to use it, to experiment. Actually, a little bit of a contradiction to what I was saying before about what performance measures you use as you go from scale up. This is the experimentation, everybody have a go phase. And certainly how we've been measuring has been really around engagement. We have opened up amazing resources, and I think it's an incredible example of truly trying to take a whole organization through a skill shift. Is kind of amazing. But that's really been about opening up a range of resources, constant enablement around those resources so that you get to a point where there's confidence and courage to use these tools and that everybody feels like they're using them in some way day to day. And in many ways, I would say, as I think about it now, this journey around performance with AI and agentic AI is like a compressed version of everything we've been talking about, because we now need people to shift that mindset. It's not about activity. It has to now become about impact. And also recognizing that some of your colleagues around you may have got there sooner and faster. Maybe the custom GPTs that they have built are better than yours and could help, could have more day-to-day impact. We don't now need the whole business to be building their own custom tools. What we need is adoption around the ones that are driving impact. And this is the shift. This is the inflection point that we're at now. And part of the organization that I support at HiBob, probably from my background, is not just the Europe region, but all of our customer success organization working with our customers. And in that leadership group, we've been discussing this very thing, which is we kind of need to slow down now on everybody experimenting all the time to let's hone in on those key 4 or 5 areas that we want to get real adoption around, because they're the ones that are going to move the needle in the day to day. It's exactly linked to what we were saying before. So not the scrappy inventors and independents, but now understanding what the organization's view is around the AI tools that will really move the needle. That's where we are now. But you know this so well. We have to be looking to the future all the time with AI. So I've just come back off of 4 days of strategizing with our global people leadership on, and a lot of it was on this topic around, what's the organization going to need from us in terms of how we structure and performance wise the skills that we put a pin in to say these are the ones that we really need to develop in the future.
Well, I guess that's the listening to you, Toby, and from other conversations, it almost feels like there's maybe three key areas for HR with AI. Number one is obviously to support the organization with that transformation, the reskilling of people, maybe changing the way we work, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that kind of organizational piece. Then there's applying the lens on ourselves, on the programs that we deliver. And I guess, as you said, let's actually prioritize the stuff that's important to leaders, to employees, to managers, where we can have an outsized impact. And then the third piece would really be, and I guess it probably talks to a company like HiBob, is that kind of responsible AI piece. How can we make sure that we're doing the right things, both obviously within HiBob as well, but also for our customers as well? I don't know what your thoughts are on that, and whether you've got maybe an example of one of those three things that maybe you're doing at the moment.
As you were talking through them, the first one that really comes to mind about this sort of the right focus. I think now it has to be focus, and this is really relevant for us. One of my VP peers said, the danger with the of being too successful in mobilizing the organization around AI adoption is that we lose that important North Star, which is that AI is not the solution. It is an enabler. So, AI is not the means. It should enable the solution, and so we shouldn't be doing it for the sake of it. And I think when you over-index on adoption, then you end up creating AI solutions, one, to maybe ways of working which are obsolete and we shouldn't be doing anyway, and two, for things that are not going to help the actual business problems that you are solving. So I think we've got to go. And the second thing you were saying then is around sort of HR's role in this. I heard a comment last week that really resonated, which is AI is COVID 2.0 for HR professionals.
I haven't actually, but I quite like it.
Yeah, I can't say it's mine. I just heard it, so I'm replaying it. But I love it because it exactly sums up where HR is positioned with AI, for all the reasons that you've just said. And we've got to. I sense that HR professionals have been a little bit tentative about maybe owning it in the same way that we did brilliantly own the response to COVID in our organizations. And I feel very excited now about this idea that we, and I think this speaks very well to your last point about doing it the right way. This is where HR can make such a big impact. So on two levels. One, the role that we play in organization design and skills development, how we talk about leadership in the future, those conversations have to be happening now. So, and then the second one is around role modeling within our own HR functions. And we're very bad at that. I think as HR professionals, it's a horseshoe. I often talk about the horseshoe. Our strengths and weaknesses are very closely related. So a good strategic HR function is so well embedded in the business that we spend all of our time thinking about how to solve the business problems. But we've got to look at our own department first, to test this. And an example that we are exploring at HiBob that I'm very excited about is this concept of boundaryless HR. So this isn't necessarily an AI inspired concept. But more and more, we're seeing, and again, I know you've got lots of other references to this, but we're seeing challenges to the traditional HR team structures. And I really feel that this is where those trends plus AI come together really beautifully. And if we are going to be able to build out those agents and have that human agent interplay to the best impact, it isn't going to be within silos. It's not going to be within I run this center of excellence, so I'm going to build my agents to support me here, but you can work it out on the business partnering side. We're limiting the impact of AI if we think about it like that. But the conundrum is, we've built these HR functions that have got experts in these different areas that like being part of those centers of excellence, and those business partners that like the identity and the strategic connection with the business. So how do we rip all of this up, restructure ourselves in a way that is much more homogenous, where I think AI and particularly agentic AI will have by far the biggest impact. So if we can explore that within our own organizational structures and create little pilot groups around some programs with it, this is not something we're doing, but it's a nice example. Imagine you're rethinking your onboarding experience. And right now, there's a handover from talent acquisition to HR operations, to the business partner, to talent and learning. And each one of those sees their role in that as quite independent. If we were to create, and I know other businesses will have done this already, agents that kind of run that onboarding process. If we overlay that handover siloed structure to the agent, we're making it way more complicated, and we're really limiting the impact of what it could do. So this is where I feel it comes back to HR leading what could be the right way, the good way of the future structures that we need for AI.
No, it's going to be fascinating, isn't it? I mean, HR kind of been on that journey from being its traditional role as a support function to becoming much more a strategic partner, accelerated by COVID in many organizations, and potentially can be accelerated again, I think, by AI and some of the examples that you shared there, Toby. Career development is another area of passion for you. And are you seeing the way that we're looking at career development changing at all? And I mean, I don't know if that's AI or other factors that are influencing that.
I hear so many organizations still striving to be skills based. We are as well. I actually think that AI is forcing us to rethink what skills based means in a very literal sense that I personally have found incredibly helpful. As mentioned before, this idea that this is a skill that 98% of the organization do not have, that a lot of the talent that we need to hire and want to have these skills do not have. So we have to develop it in-house. It's like really just so, when do you get that opportunity? When have we had that opportunity in the past where regardless of function, department, sub-department level, there's this wonderful leveler going on. So this is one thing which is very exciting. I'll tell you a different trend which I'm fascinated by, which is that Gen Z, who so often I think do push the boundaries of ways of working in a way that I have a lot of respect for. You'll never find me being a down talker of Gen Z. Not least because by the end of this decade, they will make up 30% of the workforce and be in a number of leadership positions. So it's going to be futile anyway to be a downer on it.
Try to push water uphill, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's happening. I love how they challenge things, right? So I love how the traditional structures, certainly when I started my career in the Big Four consulting arena, we looked to people that had been in that business for 30, sometimes 40 years to sort of tell us how to be successful there, to show us the skills that we needed. And we sort of were mini versions of them. That's what we did. And I like now that is often being challenged. And however, there's one area where I do feel it is Gen Z are not actually pushing the innovation, and that is in career development. So when I sit down and talk to our teams around what they need in order to be successful in their roles, quite often it's, well, I need to know how I can be promoted to this level and this level and this level. And the structure that they're mapping out is very traditional, inline ladder career development. So it's actually incumbent, I think, on the deep L&D passion, those that are passionate about it, to help innovate on what some alternatives could look like. And one thing in a scaling business that we can really benefit from is internal mobility. And this actually comes back to an earlier question you asked with, how do you deal with some of those difficult difficult performance conversations when what the business needs is changing and people that have been successful in the past might not be now. Not every stage of your organization is at the same level of maturity at the same time. And, I love to see those moments of internal mobility opening up more and more. And I think, that the big corporates, I think, some of them have got really beautiful examples of how this works with these, all the way down to forced movement. Every 2 or 3 years, you need to move into a different area, and it's so interesting. We don't have that luxury in the scale up world, But often it's a great way to start to imply those more squiggly careers. I'm now seeing colleagues at Bob who are on their second or third internal mobility, not because things aren't working, but because they're proving themselves to be a great transferer of skills and knowledge into different parts of the business. And I think we'll be able to see more of that. The other piece is really a big question mark over two areas, I would say: leadership and the concept of expertise. I think AI is going to shake up the concept of expertise. If we get to this point of generative AI at the pace that we're being told to prepare for, then humans will not be the experts. So is it worthwhile investing in becoming deep experts in areas, or is it instead worthwhile becoming an expert in how to manage agents and AI tools that can be those experts? And for me, this is one of the first times where I feel really excited about what the world of work could look like in a sort of post-AI world, because I do think, as much as we say we really want to have enriched career paths for both individual contributors and managers, the reality is the manager track is going to get you further up the business. There is more opportunity for those. This is a sort of awkward truth that we dance around a bit, I think. And there are some great senior IC positions, but they're not the ones that are going to get you all the way to the top. But there is a version of the world where if you can become supreme at managing agents, and that will be a very different skill set, that could open up a whole new career path which just doesn't exist right now. I don't hear people calling out for this. So this is for me what's so interesting with this trend, that the call outs are for traditional structures around career growth and development. And I think it's incumbent upon business leaders and HR to start to sketch out some alternative versions to get people excited around. Because that's then where we'll see the change and mobilization around it.
That's really interesting. So listening to you there, Toby, it's almost, if you're an individual contributor who maybe isn't excited around people management, and as you said, people that move into the people management role tend to be the ones that flow up in an organization, obviously with some exceptions. What you're saying there, or maybe that individual contributor or that I see, maybe there's an opportunity for them to manage agents, and get that kind of more senior experience. So they're playing to their strengths, their desires, but they're having an outsized impact than maybe they could have as an individual contributor. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see where it gets to, won't it?
Yes, for sure. And I think organizations will become leaner. And I hope not sort of drastically so. I'm not sort of, don't get me wrong there, but I think in our world, in the scale up world, we have to be lean. And HiBob's always taken a really quite a cautious view of the macroeconomic situation, and as a result, we've, I think, remained a nicely lean organization. So we're fortunately not in a position where there's lots of extra people sitting around. But I know that there are some organizations that have maybe been a little bit bullish with their hiring, particularly if they've maybe closed a funding round and off they go, and are now questioning whether they have overblown workforces, and we're seeing some of the impact of that. But the trend will be for leaner organizations. And so when it comes to career development and skills development to keep people in that organization and developing in that organization, we're going to have to find other ways for people to grow. And that's where that fantastic AI opportunity comes up. I think, a very practical example of this idea of expertise versus knowing how to get the expertise rather than being the expert is something I've experienced and together with my team around our international expansion. So I don't have Croatia, Portugal, German experts on my team. I have people on my team who know exactly what steps they need to do in order to gain that knowledge or tap into it from other people. What's our ecosystem that we need in order to be able to employ responsibly and robustly in a new country? And it's that sort of example, but played out in an agentic world, that I think we need to cast our minds forward. And it just opens up tremendous opportunity for people that may feel really hindered by only looking, and daunted by that people management route.
No, really interesting, Toby. And you mentioned obviously macroeconomic uncertainty, which seems to
Yeah.
be the topic. Well, it's not even the topic du jour, is it? It's the topic de decade. If I could actually get my French properly on that on decade, but and as you say, we've seen examples of companies that may be overhired. Is coming out of the pandemic. A lot of the big technology firms, some of the big consulting firms, and we've seen layoffs, obviously, as a result of that. I'm just wondering, as a company that's growing, that's in an exciting space, with this economic uncertainty, those geopolitical tensions that we hear about in the news every day, and cost of living pressures, how are you seeing some of those external pressures maybe showing up in your workforce?
Well, they are showing up. I think we have to be really honest about that. And again, it's now a cliched expression because for good reason, which is this idea we want people to bring their whole selves to work. We invite people to bring their whole selves to work, and there's lots of research about why, and we know that it helps build trust if you're being truly authentic, and we know that it also helps drive innovation if people feel that they can show up truly as themselves, and we bleed then into Project Aristotle and psychological safety. So all of these components that we've celebrated in the workplace also have another side to that coin, which is if you really invite people to show up to work as their true selves and bring all of themselves to work, HR leaders and wider business leaders, we have to then be prepared for the fact that means we get the hard times as well as the good times. And it's a challenge for our managers, and it's a challenge for our individuals. I do see, again, this is an area where the strong HR teams are thriving. We're not put off by this. We understand that life happens, but definitely, we used to say that an EAP, an employee assistance program, was sort of what you would need in order to be prepared for the world outside the walls of the office. But those EAPs are designed for the 1% that are in crisis mode. To begin with, I haven't got the data, but my sense from what I see is that more people now than 1% are in crisis mode. But there's this new layer now, which is people who are faced with anxiety and stress and worry because of what they see out in the world. And if you're listening to this, and for you as well, David, think about the conversations that you've had in the last month, where maybe you said to the person you're chatting to over a drink somewhere, you know what, let's just stop this conversation. It's too depressing. Maybe you're talking about geopolitics. Maybe you're talking about a future that's too unknown. But I keep hearing that soundbite. Oh, you know what, let's just change the subject. It's too much. And it's so telling. If that's how people feel in their downtime, then inevitably it's going to bleed into work. And we have been trying to get on the front foot of this more and more. And if as an organization, if you're not really on top of things like your absence rates, and not the big ones, but the kind of day-to-day ones that are implicit of maybe people feeling just a little overwhelmed, if you're not signposting enough that your sick leave policy is just as valid for mental health as it is for physical health, that's a quick win, by the way. We had some survey feedback in one of our anonymous surveys 6 months ago saying, I really think we ought to have sick days for mental health. And we were able to respond and say, hey, these are sick days, they're paid sick days. We're not telling you whether it's for physical health or mental health. And right now it could well be either. So, you are empowered to make that call. But there's more and more data that points to that sort of 20-25% of the organization being in a state of anxiety and stress that is that confluence of the outside world meets the inside world. And I think it's an investment well worth making to provision for that. We are in the process of going through some really exciting conversations with a supplier that will bring, I think, quite a really forward-looking approach to all of our mental health, where we'll actually be going to the organization and saying, we are providing you with this range of mental health tools, and we really want you to use them. And this for me is a shift. I remember 5 or 6 years ago working with business stakeholders who would say, yeah, but if we invest in all of this counseling and stuff. Like, does that mean people are going to use it and then they're going to take time off because of it? And I think it's fine. Let's not open up that can of worms. And that can of worms is open. So, and it's been open because of what's going on in the outside world, and employers can make a win-win difference there. It comes back to empower your people, power your business. Like, we can't close our eyes to the fact that the wider environment right now is causing immense amount of worry and concern for people. Not everyone, but a lot more people than used to be struggling with these things even 5 years ago.
Well, there certainly seems, I've been in workplace quite a long time. There certainly seems to be more things happening around the world now. And then when you add the kind of AI revolution as well, and how that makes people maybe feel a little bit insecure about their jobs as well, you add that to the economic, the geopolitical stuff, the health, given that we recently in a global pandemic, you can understand why lots of people perhaps are struggling, I guess, at the moment.
Absolutely. And I think what you've said is really critical, because there can be some intergenerational play here of kind of writing off younger generations for being a little weak with this stuff. And I don't buy into that. I think there's, first of all, I think in what we're seeing, it's not limited to specific generations in the workplace. I think people are feeling it for different reasons at different stages. And secondly, it's exactly what you were saying, which is this. You teed it up. You said the last 5 years, the last decade. We seem to be really in a new normal of uncertainty, and that's unprecedented. There's that word. I got that in now. It's unprecedented for us in business as well, because we haven't had to cater for a workforce that has been in such a protracted period of uncertainty. I heard a phrase the other day that really made me smile, where someone said, "I just want to live in precedented times." And I really liked that. But we don't. So we need to support our teams through it.
And you've talked a little bit about how we do that support. But what else should organizations maybe be doing differently to support mental health and well-being at work? You gave that great example about telling people, reminding people that sick days can be for mental health as well as physical health. What other sort of things do you think companies could be doing?
Two things come to mind. One is the investing in a proper provider for this. I feel, this is where we are now in some quite advanced stages for a pilot, and I won't say more on that yet, but I'm really excited about this, and I think it will be a very proactive stance. So that's the first thing. You can't. If we're reactive to this, it's going to really eat into our available workforce. So, I think there's two whys. One why is because it's the right thing to do, and the other why is because of productivity and the workforce. So it will start eating into our available workforce, which means we need to get on the front foot and not wait for people to be in difficulty, but provide them with the tools and resources to self-support throughout is the first thing. And the second one, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but it's supporting our leaders, particularly frontline leaders, in how to spot the signs and what to do when they spot the signs of people who are struggling. And also create those environments where it's okay to be talking about it. I think that what we were saying earlier regards to bringing your whole self to work, that statement carries a lot of responsibility for organizations. I still feel that the default is that if that whole self is not bubbly and fun and creative and is harder and struggling, then I'll call HR. And that's not scalable. And also it stops us from picking up the warning signs. So, and I'm not just talking about mental health first aiders here. I'm talking about really baking into our leader enablement things around team well-being, the skills around team well-being. In our code that I mentioned earlier, there are behaviors there around leading with intention, for example. And that includes understanding the individuals on your team and how they are doing. And then the second piece is providing support to our leaders to know what to do with that. So one of the tools that we're looking at that I'm really excited about has a whole section which is specifically to do with leaders. If you lead teams, you need more support. You will be more exposed, because there's a real double reality that we have to confront. And it's so challenging for the leaders of those teams. Someone will come to them and say, I'm worried about this person on my team. I think they might need to be signed off sick. They're not well. I didn't spot it before. I missed the signs. And what am I going to do about the shortfall in the work? It comes back to what we were saying earlier about organizations are becoming increasingly more lean. And when I started my career in those Big Four consulting, if somebody was taken off a project, you had somebody on a bench and you put them on the project. But no one's on the bench anymore. So those managers are under so much pressure because they're also thinking, I want to look out for that person and do right by them. But if I sort of support this route that I can see ourselves going down, what am I going to do? How am I going to cover the work? But there's two angles to that manager enablement. It's helping them spot the warning signs. It's helping them build the psychological safety. It's giving them confidence of what they can and can't say in the day-to-day in the legislative landscape. We've seen already within Bob, just tackling that can make a huge difference to sickness rates on teams. But the second piece is actually providing them with support for the pressure and the stress that's caused when somebody on their team might need to take some time out because they're struggling. So, it becomes layered and complex.
Really good, Toby. And for listeners that maybe are looking to maybe put a business case together to get their organizations to invest more in mental health and well-being at work, do listen to the episode we did earlier this year with Jan Emmanuel Deneuve from University of Oxford, and they've been doing some big data analysis around the financial benefits of investing in well-being and mental health as well. So it's not just the right thing to do. It's actually, as you said, Toby, actually supports productivity and performance as well if you can get it right. Toby, it's been a great conversation, and we're moving now to the last question, which is the question of the series. So this is the question we're asking everyone on this series of the Digital HR Leaders podcast, which HiBob are kindly sponsoring. I'm going to get you to look into your crystal ball now a little bit. What's the single biggest shift in the future of work that you foresee by 2030, and how will or how can HR lead it?
I think it's got to be AI related, and more specifically, I would say the entire organization's structure. The concept of the colleagues with whom we work being either human or agents, and the concept of specialism versus generalism is all up in the air for me. So that three main areas that I think could look drastically different in less than 5 years' time. And the exciting thing for HR is we have a leading role in all three of those areas. The challenge here is so much of it is still conceptual. So there's an element of kind of, I can talk about this and I can get behind the theory, but what do I do tomorrow? And this is where we can already start to play a role. Let's build pilot pods for an organization that works in a different way. And I would say that needs to be one that is far less siloed, much more boundaryless. Let's bring together people from different teams, put them in tiger teams or whatever the term is that you want to use, to start to train the organization around thinking less about kind of, well, this is my swim lane and that's your swim lane. And breaking the silo means that we have a one-to-one. We need to get more radical than that. And then the second piece is going to be around encouraging more and more today, tomorrow, this idea that the AI tools that you have access to right now are not tools. They're virtual colleagues that you work alongside, and they're brainstorming partners. And there's almost a bit of a personification. I don't want to get sort of too frightening with that, but I think that will help people shift how they think about this the AI options they have around them, from being another version of Excel to that colleague that I can't get their attention on a tool, and they're going to brainstorm with me. So ask yourself, what are the small things we can experiment tomorrow that will help position people ready for what is a somewhat uncertain future, obviously? So small steps also allow us to stay nimble.
No, really good. Really exciting as well, because arguably many of our organizations have org charts from the 20th century and we're 25 years into the 21st century. So maybe it's time that we change them. And obviously, as HR professionals are playing a big role in organizational design, we've got a big opportunity to do that. So very good, Toby. I really enjoyed our conversation. I knew I would. and you've certainly not disappointed at all, Toby. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you today. Can you share how listeners can follow you on social media and find out about all the great work that you're doing, but also what HiBob's doing for the field as well?
So definitely LinkedIn is my field. I'm very active on LinkedIn in a personal and HiBob capacity. So Toby Hough, Hough, is where you'll find me on LinkedIn, and that's where I hang out the most in all things professional.
Perfect. And they can go to hibob.com presumably as well to find out more about the work you're doing at HiBob.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of great material there as well from our own research, articles from my own, both from me, from the wider HR team, and some of the experts from other parts of the business.
Fantastic. Well, as I said, Toby, it's been an absolute pleasure. Look forward to seeing you maybe Unleash in Paris in a few weeks' time.
I'll see you there.
See you there. Take care.
In this series, we will be speaking to a range of senior leaders who are pushing a data-driven and digital HR agenda. Make sure that you subscribe via your podcast app of choice and also via our YouTube channel for free and regular interviews with the digital HR leaders of the future.